normal life is, that everyday life is that an agreement by word of mouth, the fact that there's no paper covering it does not mean it is not a contract. It is a contract. And so all the terms of contracts apply, but they don't have it documented as such. So they have an agreement which may be formal or informal in a certain sailing area on the basis of common terms like freight rates, the number of sailings in a given time, the working conditions, and so on. Therefore, the only factor left open to competition in most cases is the efficiency and quality of service that you offer, as I said earlier. The liner conferences may be closed or open. When we say a liner conference is closed, is that maybe the initial few people who started, they are the only people who operate. They don't accept new members into it. But that is an illegality in the United States. They don't allow closed conferences. Anybody can come in. Then it is an open conference. As and when, it's just like what is happening here these days. You see that sometimes a taxi rank will begin with one or two taxis standing at the point. Very soon, before we realize, the whole place is filled with taxis, because it is open. There's no restriction as to the membership. So when there's no restriction, then we say it is an open conference, but when there's restriction, it is a closed conference. The goals for having the liner conferences is to maintain a stable market and fair competition among the carriers. And it also reduces competition between the ship owners calling at the same ports. It guarantees a shipper a consistent level of service from participating lines. So you are sure of getting the returns because your line or your ship is involved in that line, and you always get cargo back and forth. And they determine freight rates and coordinate ship capacity, sailing schedules. So there's some level of understanding, and it creates that ease of mind and not too much worry, because when, for example, sometimes the ships come here, if you ask them, where is your next port? It's unknown. They are now going to determine, and it's because most of them are tramp ships. Okay? They are ships that are carrying bulk cargoes. When the charterer charters you, he is only interested in getting his cargo to Tema or Takoradi. What becomes of you next is none of his business. So it is up to the ship owner to now go around looking for another business from here to wherever he wants to go to, or the cargo would carry. So there's a level of uncertainty when you are in the tramp trade as compared to the conference line. Okay. So examples of the conference was the Far East Freight Conference, and then the TACA, the Transatlantic Conference, the UCOL Conference, and so on. Advantages of conferences. Of conference, provision of reliability in time, schedule, and service, ships of the optimum size and speed, and best equipment to deal with the trade concern. So you could tailor fit the ship to the trade that you want to put her into. It's not something that maybe you have a very big ship, you go to the port hoping to get cargo, you don't get it. So the whole big ship is half filled, and therefore you are wasting resources. But with the liner, if you are involved in a liner, because they give a certain description of ship that you can bring in, then you are sure that that ship going in that trade will always be profitably engaged. Okay. The disadvantages, however, are that the high service may always push up the prices. The prices are always having to go up because the quality of service that you are demanding as a shipper would necessitate them having higher charges so that they can maintain it. sometimes with complacency and reluctance to accept change and greater efficiency might set in, bureaucracy sets in, and it tends to affect the attitudes of the people. Okay. So those are disadvantages with the conference ships. Conferences started as far back as 1540. That's a long history, where there was an agreement on tariffs and services between Britain and Denmark. You know, these people, they are maritime nations, especially the Danes. I don't know if you know about the Danes so well. They are the Vikings. Have you heard the name Vikings before? Yeah. They are the Vikings. They are very, very tough people. They are very, very aggressive. Very, very aggressive people. They are all over the place, creating trouble for all Europe and so on. And the British too were tough, a small island nation, so they always clashed, but they were able to come to some form of agreement between them concerning tariffs and services that they offered. Okay. So it dates well back into the 14th century, okay. The 15th century. Yeah. But the first officially recognized conference was formed in 1875 between UK and Calcutta, that is in India. So the UK Calcutta conference, which was triggered when the Suez Canal was opened. So you see that the Suez Canal was opened so long ago. Today, some 150 conferences exist worldwide, but they are not as strong as they used to be. Now, because of the container trade, it has broken the back of conferences a bit. So they are not as visible as they used to be in the 60s and 70s. Conferences were all over the place. You had this conference here, this conference there. But now they've gone on the quiet because most of these trade that they were involved in the general cargo has shifted into containers. And so you have the container shipping lines like Maersk, MOL, and MSC taking over the field altogether. Okay. So you have that system now on the ground. One of the largest conferences was the Far East Freight Conference with 22 members, and they were controlling about 40% of sailings between Europe and the Far East. Very, very vibrant, unlike some of the other conferences, like the UK West African conferences. They were mainly the UK West Africa and then the continent West African COWOC and UCOWOC. They were mainly involved or made up of ships belonging to these nations in the West African sub-region. You had the Black Star Line, Niger Line, the CAM ship of Cameroon, Togo. You know, Togo had a shipping line, you wouldn't believe it. They had a shipping line in Sierra Leone and Abidjan, La Côte d'Ivoire. But now all those shipping lines have collapsed. So with it also went the lines. So you don't have those liner services anymore. Now they've been taken over by Maersk and MOL and others, because most of the cargoes were general cargoes. And now general cargoes is more profitable to put them in containers. There's less damage, less pilferage, and so on. So when they went into the containers, the big container lines came and took over the whole business. So those liner services have collapsed. Let's see. I want to finish the conference development and then. Pardon? The development was to overcome the competition from non-liner conferences, and it's not easy because it's not all the shipping lines that joined the conferences. Some still stayed outside, and they were always undercutting, giving cheaper prices to the shippers. And so what sometimes some of the conferences did was they would give you some rebate. If you agree to ship so much with them, instead of them charging you this fare, then they will reduce it a bit. Okay. So they have what we call the deferred rebate, which was used by the conference ships over a period of time, usually 3 to 6 months. They will reduce the prices for you so that you don't go to the individual ships. If you are a shipper, like the manufacturing concerns like Nestle, Lever Brothers, and so on, you are constantly, every time you are moving cargoes, it is usually more profitable to stick with the conferences than to go for the individuals, because if their ships break down, then you are caught immediately. So most of the time, to also encourage you to stay with them, then they will give you those deferred rebates for a period of time where you pay less for the services they are offering you. Or they can also have dual rates to be given to the shippers who sign contracts to use only conference lines. They'll give you those sort of rates. Okay. It was during that period in 1955 that they set up something like the British Shippers Council to enable the conferences negotiate collectively with the various nations. So Shippers Council, in fact, it is a council. It's only here in Ghana they've made it into an authority.